This is episode 119 of the Your Next Chapter podcast, where Kellie O'Brien and I have a pretty expansive conversation all about space and creativity and consistency and the importance of active listening, personalization, being useful and interested, and many other things. I hope you find it inspiring and take one or two nuggets of ideas that you can go out and put into action today. Building a business and life that blends contribution, fulfillment, and financial reward? Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the show for women in their 40s and beyond who are on this adventure. I'm Angela Rasmus, and I'm delighted you're here. Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the Your Next Chapter podcast. These are some of my favorites when I get to call in a friend and a colleague and we just have a wholehearted conversation about something interesting that's going on at the moment that we're observing or experiencing that we also think is going to be helpful for you. Hence why I have invited the gorgeous Kellie O'Brien, who's an online marketing consultant for micro and small businesses, back into my world again. Kellie's been a guest a couple of times, and I just have to keep bringing her back because she's got some wonderful observations to share. Hey, Cal, how are you today?
Good, thanks, Ange. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It is always a delight, and we've got to get in a little bit of the behind-the-scenes information here. You were calling in from your
walk-in wardrobe. It's very spacious. I have a light and a door and lots of space, but yes, it's going high-tech today.
We're having this conversation that, and I used to record my podcast in my wardrobe as well because it absorbs all the sound, so it gives a really good sound rather than being in a floorboard room. I changed mics, so I actually got let out of the closet, so to speak, but it's really working perfectly for you today. So it's having a bit of a giggle. If we turned on our videos and stuck it on YouTube, I'm sure we're not the only ones who podcast from interesting places, but at least you're comfy.
Exactly.
Well, what we've decided we wanted to talk about today was this concept of business re-emergence. That's sort of the title that we've given this. It's a bit of a conversation about what have been our experiences and observations during the, inverted commas, unprecedented times that we experienced over the last couple of months with, COVID. Really, I kept seeing it as like a bowling alley and all the skittles, and then down came the bowling ball and just knocked everything out of normality into a very different way of being for many, many people. Now, I don't want to put too comical a turn on it because it certainly had an incredibly unfortunate toll, both physically, obviously on a lot of people, emotionally, financially, but it's been different for everybody. And it's really interesting to find out what your experiences have been, may it with your business itself or with what you're seeing with your clients, and then talking about how we actually come out the other side. So give me a bit of a snapshot. What's been going on in Kellyland with your business? What have you felt whilst you've been in this different period?
It's been really interesting to watch, I think, because different businesses have adapted differently during this period. Some were already online. Even I have bricks and mortar clients, and some of those have already been online. So for them to be able to adapt, it's happened much quickly, and they were able to see the opportunities and jump on those. And I guess I've been fortunate that most of my clients and myself were in a position where our businesses could still continue to move forward. We didn't have to stop. Some did wind back, but some just, took completely different routes. So, for example, one was a yoga studio, a bricks and mortar yoga studio in the middle of New York City, of all the places in the world to be, to be with a bricks and mortar business.
Absolutely, that would have been a real hard one.
Exactly, that's right. But instead of closing the doors and not doing anything, they took their classes online, but they also then created wellness courses and found ways to adapt. And so their audience was still able to experience them, and they were still able to grow their business during that time. And I think one of the key things for me out of this is those things that we've experienced during this time has allowed us then to see, what do we want to keep doing once we come out of this? As we do re-emerge, there are things that we really love doing in our businesses that I think will continue. And I think that's been a really key thing for me through all of this.
I think that one there is one of the most interesting points of what do we want to keep. I know in my own personal experience, because we're in this beautiful bubble, I guess, as everyone has described it. Our son came home from uni because it was closed. My daughter's school was closed. My husband brought his office home. That was a bit of a challenge sometimes. I didn't realize how noisy he is when he's doing phone calls with clients. I have to wear earmuffs. But we're in this little bubble where everything's slowed down. And we were able to actually take stock and decide what do we want to put back in and what do we want to leave out in a business sense. And that became really clear to me, the things that I was enjoying the most. And one of those was the space. I actually began to realize that I'd been working really, really hard, and in ways almost that I didn't need to. There was excess things that I was doing. And what I've found now is that desire to stay in this slightly slower, more considered space than I was in before. And that, what I mean by less things to do, it was becoming less active on social media, just as one example, and not feeling that I really needed to be as visible. It was okay to pull back a little bit and allow myself to start each day a bit later, and to be able to look after myself in the mornings and walk the dog and have a leisurely breakfast and things like that. It's one of the blessings of working from home that I could allow that space to expand a little more. So it made me realize that I'm going to make sure going forward that I do allow more time within my day and not go, oh yeah, I can fit that in. Oh yeah, I can do that. Oh yeah, I can do that appointment. No, actually, I'll do that one tomorrow. And just allowing a bit more space. And that allowed me to have more creativity show up. How about you?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I've been talking a lot lately about seeing the world through a different lens now. I think that's what coronavirus has done. It's put a different filter on the world, or even taken the filter off maybe, and letting us see things that are more important to us. And I think one of the interesting things for me is that my 12-year-old daughter, she's in grade 7, said to me, I don't want to go back, Mum. I want to stay. I want to stay in this world, because we went for walks as a family. We played board games around the table. We did the things that we just never had time to do. We stopped and actually did those things. And I think we now realize what's really important to us in life, and how do we want our business to fit into our life, instead of how are we fitting our life around our business.
Oh, absolutely. That's actually always been a philosophy that I have talked about, is that your business needs to complement rather than commandeer your life. And I don't want to feel hypocritical, because I've recognized that there was an opportunity for me to allow more space in. I think there's times when we are a little bit more in hustle mode, like when things are happening, and times when we can actually take our foot off the gas. I think it's that recognition of almost like the seasons of our business, that you can't be going at full throttle all the time, because that's just a lesson, or a recipe rather, for burnout. So yeah, being choosy like your daughter and recognizing that things can be a little different is something I think we can all learn from.
Definitely. And I think the hustle thing can become quite addictive. And I think sometimes coronavirus in a way had to happen to allow us to all pause and reassess what is important. Do we need to be doing this all the time? Can we? And as you know, my big message in business is all around putting together systems so that you can leverage your time, and so that you can get back time to focus on the things that matter in your life. And then using, of course, strategy and storytelling to ensure that those things feel seamless, and that people go through your system seamlessly. And I think for me, it's been that becomes even more prevalent during this time, that we don't need to hustle all the time. There are times, of course, if you're launching or something's coming up that you do need to do that, then that's fine. But if you can have a business that's consistent, and I guess that's probably one of the other key things out of this, is I saw some businesses just switch off their marketing. And I think you've got to remember that people, as we come out of this, need to know that you're still there. And so that consistency becomes really important. And if you can do that in a way that doesn't drain you, and it's not what you're doing all the time, then as you say, it opens up more creativity. You've got more space to think about things, when those everyday activities can be systemized and leveraged.
Well, that's probably something to explore, because I definitely this creativity piece that came out, which I really believe your brain needs that rest. And when you allow it that space, it does start to sort of roam off into the nether regions of your frontal lobes. And some new ideas definitely turned up for me that I'm exploring and I'm hugely excited about, but they're very embryonic. So I'm just going to tend to them over there and share them once they're a little bit more full-fledged. But for us to be able to bring that space into our business as we're re-emerging, so recognizing for most of us that we appreciated and enjoyed having a bit more of that space and we want to retain it going forward. Talk to me about what is your definition of consistency. What does that look like and how do you actually achieve it then in terms of being available and visible to your clients?
Yeah, sure. I guess when we think about our marketing, it's a full cycle. It's the relationship, and I always talk about, Beryl and Cyril who meet each other.
Okay, not a date. If you've started listening right now, this is not a dating show, but dating and marketing have parallels.
They do, but they really do. And so I always talk about this couple who meet each other in a bar, and first of all they make eye contact, and that's really us in social media world, where we sort of see people and someone catches our eye, and then we start engaging with that person and we have a conversation, and we might take the next step with them, that very first commitment that we're going to make, which might be a coffee date in this instance, or they might go to bingo or bowls, whatever happens in the world of 70-year-olds. But they make that first commitment, and for us, that's getting them onto our email marketing list. So we've created a relationship to start with, but then we need that first commitment, and that can be really hard. Some people find that part of their marketing the trickiest, to actually get someone to exchange their email address for some piece of content or something valuable. And you've got to think about that email address now is like asking someone for money. So once you can set that system up, then the next part is then nurturing them. So if you have an email marketing system, you can nurture someone and share the stories and the messages that they most need to hear in that moment, so that you can then invite them to the big stage with you, which is working with you. So for me, having that system means that on the front end, actually attracting people, I can get more creative around it. And even on the bottom end, when I'm looking at my offers, I can get more creative around the way that I offer services to people as well. So an example is that this week I had a guy filled out my form, and I got on the call with him, and he was having some trouble with his business in attracting people to his business and them understanding what he was offering. So I was giving him some tips, and at the end he said, I've got enough just out of the discovery call alone, because he had some big holes, I guess, in that system that I'm talking about. There was ways that people just weren't coming through and being nurtured. And I asked him, okay, so how did you find me? What did you do? And he said, well, I was telling my partner that I Googled, and all of a sudden I was filling out a form to have a call with you, and I can't remember what happened from the point of Googling to filling out the form. And he said, I never ever once felt like you were selling to me, because there was this story that I went through, and it was hitting me where I most needed it to hit, in the heart, and I just went through it seamlessly without being conscious of what I was doing. And that's what we really want, people to come into our world and to know that we can provide value, but to never feel like they're being sold to.
I think hearing that, what comes up most for me, and this is something that everyone, I really want you to hear this, is like you, I have a lot of conversations with people who are in our space, who are in the business of helping other businesses, and we recognize that we have value, but sometimes find it hard to actually charge for what we do. There is a reticence there, and people get concerned and fearful about having these initial conversations. These are clients I've spoken with just in the last week. And really having people flip their thinking from, we're not here to sell, that's just a process. What we're actually here to do is be useful. It's how can we be useful to someone, and how can we have empathy for those people? So with what you were gifting to that guy that you're on the call with, which I guess if I go back to your examples, had you made eye contact, or were you're at the bar engaging and conversing? But at that point, with our focus purely on being of service, of being useful, of, as he said, finishing the phone call and thinking, well, I've already got some great tips. If we allow ourselves to be in that space and get off this concern about, am I being good enough? Is this working? Will they buy it? If we just stay in that space of useful empathy, then that's when the relationship really happens. There's a brilliant book I've just read, The Self-Worth Safari. You know how interested I am in self-worth and how much that plays a part, of our success as a business owner is our ability to stand there in our worth. And one of the flips that John Nyland, the author, speaks about is stop worrying about being interesting and worry about being interested. And that's where the empathy part comes from. So if we're fully present, if we are listening to what people are stuck on, and that can be in a conversation, or you can listen in a Facebook group, you can listen by watching what's happening in the world. If we respond to that with being useful, empathetic, and interested, that's when relationships are really given the kindling that they need to ignite. Don't you think?
Oh, without a doubt. And I think it's that care factor, showing someone that you actually care about them can go a long way. But the listening thing is, I think, also really important. And I know I've talked about this with you before, Ange, around the concept that even right now in COVID-19 and even coming out of COVID-19, when it's what should I be doing from a marketing perspective right now, listen first. Like, don't rush in with another idea. And you and I, and have lots of ideas. We're ideas people. We have lots of things, and we get really excited about putting something out there into the world. But I think we have to always make sure that we listen first, because I have, over my entire business career, had points where I put out something that I thought was wonderful and nobody else cared about, because we have to step back into the shoes of our ideal client. We need to, one, listen to them, but two, step back into their shoes. So when that guy went through my systems and went through the Beryl and Cyril scenario, I'd stepped in his shoes first to be able to know exactly what he wanted. And I think sometimes we think, and I've seen this time and time again with businesses, they think a lot about what they want in their business, and a lot about what they think will be useful and what they think looks good and sounds great. But they've got to go back to, actually, I'm selling this to someone else, or I'm being of service to somebody else. What is it that they actually want from me, and how can I be of service to someone?
So the question that jumps onto everyone's lips when they're hearing this sort of conversation is, well, how do you find out? Well, I know in very simple terms, one of the things that I'm always doing is when I do have those, I call them breakthrough calls, when I get that opportunity to hear what someone is challenged by, what they're struggling with, what they're wanting to achieve, I take just so many notes constantly, and I keep all of those notes, and then I'm looking back through the notes from all the different conversations I'm having, and I've got a highlighter, and I am highlighting the commonalities, because although every business is unique, in terms of the individual, that in and of itself makes it unique, but the challenges are not. They feel that you as an individual might feel like you're on an island all alone, but I absolutely guarantee that something that you're experiencing, especially what you're feeling emotionally about things, that is a common experience. And so that's one of the ways in which I find those points to design my content around, to design the way that I show up, to work out what I'm going to provide, definitely comes from those conversations. I mean, you can also, I've done a couple of surveys through my newsletter and in my Facebook group to find out what is it that people are needing at the moment. So those to me are three of the most common ways. What else could we add to that to help people really tap into that active listening?
I think the examples that you've given are fantastic. The first one is those discovery calls are invaluable, and I even take the language that someone uses and I use that on my website. So it's not just the concepts and the pain points and things that they're saying, but the actual language that they use. And some of my best copy on my website was said by one of my clients. It's not something that I came up with. Like, for example, throwing darts at a marketing map is how someone described how they did marketing. And someone else said it was like throwing seeds out into a field and the wind is just blowing it everywhere and nothing's actually
Taking root, yeah.
So those sort of lines I got from those discovery calls. But the other ways are actually looking inside of social media, seeing what people are posting. And sometimes that's other people's groups. It's not necessarily your own content. If you suddenly think, oh my goodness, but nobody ever comments on my stuff, look into active places online where people are talking about those pain points and the things that they need help with. That can be really helpful. And the other thing to think about is that for many of us, we were our ideal client 5, 10, 15 years ago. And if you kept a journal back there, then I can bet that there's some great copy back in that journal that you can lift as well. The other thing is, if you've got someone in your business who you would just love 10 more of that person, ask them for a coffee chat and just sit and chat with them about what it is that they're going through, what their pain points are, and you'll lift some really good ideas and content from that too.
And now we can actually have those coffee dates face to face.
Yes.
If we don't want to Zoom. Yeah, the listening point is so important. So this is an example, is that as you're re-emerging and you're deciding perhaps to whether or not you're going to go back to the way things were, you're going to introduce something new, you're going to allow more space, you're going to come up with something that's been calling you and actually bring it into reality. But all of those demand that active listening. And this is whether or not you're going to change or stay the same. And it's what we used to have to do anyway. So in that respect, nothing has changed. It's business as usual in that regard.
Definitely. I think even to take that one step further is also to look at has your ideal clients or your most aligned clients habits changed as well. So when we say that, okay, I know that to be able to get in front of for Beryl to get in front of Cyril, that they need to be on Facebook. But it's not just Facebook anymore. And I think even during coronavirus, our habits have changed. Our habits have changed during coronavirus because if we look at Facebook being just Facebook, it's now Facebook stories, it's Facebook messages, it's all these other things that are happening inside of Facebook, Facebook Watch, Facebook Live videos. What is it that your most aligned client actually does on Facebook, and thinking about how you can meet the person that you most want to meet in that place. So when you're talking to your ideal client and you are listening, figuring out also, okay, I understand the messages now, but where do I need to share those messages as well?
And that occasionally can feel like I am throwing darts at the marketing dartboard, just trying to work it out. But then we make that simple. We ask. And I guess if we have been in that position of being of service, adding value, being useful, being interested rather than trying to be interesting, then we've laid the groundwork for being able to ask those questions.
Exactly. That's right. So listen first, and then you know what your marketing plan needs to look like. You know where you need to show up, you know what the messages need to be, and you know what you're actually offering your most aligned client as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the other things that I've listened to, speaking of listening, when it comes to this emergence of what things are changing, there seems to be a few trends that are coming through. One of the most welcome ones that I heard, being someone who works on Zoom all the time, so there wasn't a real big change for me when I had to stay home. I've been staying home. I was ahead of the curve. I was obviously, like a lot of us, working from home, working on Zoom. But there was a lot of people that had to move across to Zoom. We did hear about Zoom fatigue, and I think that was a lot of people who weren't accustomed to the format and had to adjust. But I had a very good friend who's in a mastermind with me who was describing a coaching training that this organisation she's involved with was intending to deliver face-to-face. We're talking like a 6-day training. There was 50 people that were signed up for it, and they didn't want to just go, oh, well, just put it on hold and who knows, at some stage we'll be able to do it. They actually decided to pivot and do it all on Zoom, to do it all online. And you think 6 days, that's a lot. And there was concern. But the way they ran it and the way they set it up worked beautifully. But most importantly, the people who experienced it actually rated the online experience at 82% positive, like better than face-to-face. And some of the things that people were talking about there was that they didn't have to travel, apart from, just down the hallway. They didn't have to, get dressed up in the corporate attire or whatever it might be to be at that event. There was less fear about raising your hand and asking a question because you could type it in. So there wasn't concern about, oh, will I be judged for asking this? Which, hopefully your worth is anchored enough that you can ask questions in live trainings, but sometimes you do get a little bit, as you're putting your hand up, will this question seem a bit odd? So all of these different reasons were meaning that people were actually finding the online environment in terms of delivery and learning as a far more positive one than they originally anticipated. So it's opening the door for a new part of the market who did not used to really look upon online as preferable. It looks like there's a little bit more of a shift there. We're not saying that we're losing face-to-face because, God help us, we're humans. We need connection. But it does seem as though online delivery, not just here you go download a PDF and watch a video and do it yourself, but the actual person live delivering is going to take off more. Have you seen anything in that space?
Oh, without a doubt. So a prime example for me is I have a leadership client who was meant to, right now, this week, was meant to be delivering a 3-day leadership program. And instead now it's all online, but it's done over 8 weeks so that there isn't that, because these are with people who aren't used to using Zoom. So it's just been chunked down and done over certain amount of hours over 2 days each week for 8 weeks. And it's done as a different, just reframing what was already going to be done. And most of what would happen in person, I guess, was now able to be done via Zoom. So nothing much has really changed. The biggest change is that the price could be reduced because there wasn't the overheads that you needed when you're doing an in-person event. You don't have to pay for food and those sorts of things. And for me, I'm even though online I might look like a big personality, I'm actually a huge introvert. So for me, traveling and doing something in person is just really getting me out of my comfort zone. So for me to be able to do something online, I'm in my element. I've got confidence. I can say what I need to say, and I feel much more comfortably in that situation. So I'm more likely to sign up for something if it's in person. If it's online than if it's in person. And the travel thing when we've got kids, and particularly obviously this week, kids have returned to full-time school, which is wonderful. But
I detected a little bit of relief and delight in your voice just then.
But, I think even for me, I have 2 young kids. So for me to be able to go and do events, it takes a lot of coordination for me to be able to go away for 2 days somewhere. I have to rely on a lot of other people, whereas when I can do it from home. So I think that does open up for a lot of people different ways. And when I talk about the yoga studio now, there's an opportunity for people to do those classes online instead of having to always go in studio. A lot of my other clients were already doing a lot of programs online, but anything that was in person, and for example, a real estate agent can do tours of houses now via Zoom and with the iPad taking them through the house and showing them different things. There's so much we can do with technology, and it's all there. In the old days, even when I started in business, everything was either really expensive, or it didn't work very well. Whereas now we have access to all this stuff that's really cheap, sometimes free, and it's really easy to use.
It's been a blessing, hasn't it? And so what we're hearing here is that there is a trend towards that sits alongside this embracing of the online world even more. And the second trend is personalization. Because we can't just have a mass market experience and expect to build the relationship. So the personalization piece is really important. And to bring up an example which is similar to yours there, I have a client who has a gym as well, but it's like a yoga Pilates bar type thing. And of course that had to stop. And taking people into the online world there was a little bit of a challenge. And we sort of worked out what it was because of an experience I've just had. Now I mentioned actually on a previous podcast a couple of weeks ago that I've just hired a wellness coach to work with me on trying to get a bit more flexible and things like that. Now she's in another state and I am training with her on Zoom, and I'm also watching videos that she has pre-recorded. Now, why people often say, but there's so much free stuff out there. Why would I bother to do it this way when people can just Google and get anything? I literally had this a conversation just before this podcast with someone I'm about to run a workshop for. And what we discussed was that my experience of being happy to, consume the content that my trainer is providing, it is because I've had the personal experience with her. So at the beginning of the program, I'm speaking with her face to face. We're going through this Zoom exercise or the Zoom workout together. So now when I watch the pre-recorded videos, I feel far more connected because I know her, as opposed to just Googling and finding anyone's video online, and trying to follow their training. The personalization has completely changed it. But the delivery methodology online is the thing that's made it accessible. I couldn't have worked with her. She's in another state. So we suddenly broaden the market as long as we keep it personal. So coming back to my client that has the gym, the bar, Pilates, and bar, Pilates, yoga studio, we talked about how when someone now joins, that she will induct them into this online world, have a personal conversation with them, talk about, what is it that the individual joining wants to achieve, what's their lifestyle, actually personalize it. And then from there, introduce them to the online content. So they feel as though they're more connected, and what has been recommended is far more personalized. It's not just well, there you go. There it all is. Here's your login. Off you go. Knock yourself out. And so that personalization piece is going to be more important than ever.
I think you can think about it in a real world sense. It's kind of like going to the doctor, that you can do Dr. Google if you really want to, and there's heaps of answers on Dr. Google.
Some of them are scary. You shouldn't read them.
That's right. But if you go to your doctor, they'll actually put together a program that's right for you. And I think that's where the gold of it is.
Yeah, exactly. And so the idea, it used to be, and I guess I'm talking a few years ago, that an online course was the be all and end all. Get a huge following, knock out an online course and go and sit on a beach and have a margarita. And that perhaps worked for a little while, but for most of us, we need to have that personal contact in some respect. So what we're talking about here, I believe it's blended learning, which is a term that's been around for a long time, but it's time for us as individual solo micro business owners to actually use some of that creativity and that space that we're allowing ourselves to work out, okay, how can I make this experience both leveraged, so it gives us back some of that time that you and I have spoken about, but still personal. And that's where the opportunity, I think, really, really is. It's very exciting.
Exactly. No, very true. And I think it doesn't matter what sort of business you're doing as well. There's so many businesses that can adapt to the online world, and you just got to think more creatively. And that's where the space becomes such a beautiful thing, because you can think more creatively, or if you can brainstorm with people within your business or get someone who can help you come up with those concepts as well. But we all have ways that we can connect with people online. And I think this period has proven that is possible, and it's now, what do you want to take from what you've just been through beyond? How has it helped grow or expand your business and your offerings?
Yep, I'm all for this, and I'm looking forward to making more changes as I go forward. And I guess that's probably a nice point for us to be bringing this conversation full circle on, is the opportunity that we have as solos and micro business owners to be very nimble. Like, we can change quickly. We can adopt and adapt what we offer, what we do quickly. We don't have all the infrastructure and the great big staff and all of that we need to be more like turning around an ocean liner. We can pivot on the spot and go, you know what? This is the slight change. And I know for sure when I closed my agency back in 2012, the business that I started then, although the threads are similar, it looks pretty darn different today than if I go back to 2012. So this is an evolution, and the COVID-19 has just given us an opportunity to now think about things in a slightly different way going forward. But consistency, saving time, systemization, those things are still important, but overall less can be more.
Well, I think to bring that all together, Ange, it's the ability that when you do need to pivot quickly, that you've already got the email list that you can talk to, you've got pinning a post to the top of your Facebook feed to let people know that something's changed. And we did see that during coronavirus. If, for example, a hair salon needs to let people know that their doors are closed and then a week later their doors are open, which was my case with my hairdresser, those things can happen in an instant. As you're saying, we don't need to go through the process of asking the board and the CEO and everybody else within the company. We can make that decision quickly, but we also have the relationship with our audience because we've been consistent to be able to communicate those changes quickly.
Yeah, and that relationship is the key, isn't it? That's one of my philosophies. You want to build long-term relationships with clients rather than conduct short-term transactions with customers. It's all about relationships if we want a sustainable, enjoyable business.
Exactly.
Oh, hey. Well, thank you, my darling. Thank you for just riffing here for a wee while with me today to talk about the different things that you're seeing and feeling and planning going forward. It's always a delight to have you here. So if people want to find out more about you, can you just remind us of where your most happy places are in the online world where we can come find you?
Sure. So you can find me on my website at kellyobrien.com.au and or on facebook.com/Kellie O'Brien AU. And pretty much all of the social media is just .com/Kellie O'Brien AU.
Cool. So there's more than one Kellie O'Brien in the world, so we're putting the AU on so you can find us here in Australia. Perfect.
Very good.
Thank you so much. And to you, my lovely listener, this conversation was one of those ones without real parameters and paradigms. We didn't come on here going, we must teach these points today. It was more about having a conversation that you can take small pieces out of and ponder and perhaps go and take some gentle action on. So thinking about what has changed for you, what do you want to let go of, what do you want more of? As you're re-emerging into the business world, is there that opportunity for you to do some pivoting? And whilst you're doing that, are you actively listening to see what your most aligned clients are wanting and needing now? Has there been changes in their world? Start some conversations. Just find out. That's the easiest way of doing it. And of course, when you're making these changes or thinking more creatively in terms of what that personalization or that opportunity for more work in the online space might look like, remember that having people around you who can support that thinking and exchange those ideas with you is always incredibly valuable. I'm a huge believer in having at least one or two belief buddies. Kelly is definitely one of mine. A belief buddy is someone who understands what it is that you're trying to achieve in the world. What is your vision? What's your mission? What's your purpose? Who are you here to help? And what's important to you? And with their understanding of your business and you, they act as beautiful sounding boards for you can exchange ideas and help them as well. So have a think. Is there a belief buddy in your world that you could reach out to and have a conversation? We're re-emerging. How are things going to be different going forward? So have some fun with that in that creative space that you have. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you here again on the next podcast. Take care. Thanks so much for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. I really do appreciate your time. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. And of course, my website, angelarasmus.com. If you enjoy the show, I'd love you to share it with another woman who's in the midst of business and life beyond 40. And if you love it, a review on iTunes or whatever app you listen in on would be fabulous. Reviews somehow impact that deeply mysterious algorithm and make it easier for the show to be found, which is always a good thing. So thanks again, and until next time, take care.